Hello and a warm welcome to a brand new episode of South Central with me, Jude Sun. This is the show where we break down key news, updates from South India across business, politics, boardroom action, and a whole lot more. Let's start by taking a look at the headlines we're tracking at this hour. Electronics exports from Tamil Nadu could breach the $18 billion mark in FY26, says State Industries Minister TRB Raja. That's a 22.8% growth from the state's FY25 electronics export value. As IIT Madras Research Park launches its 600 crore rupee Unicorn Frontier Fund, its CEO tells ET Now that the focus will be on patient capital and engineering-heavy innovations in space tech, defense and semiconductors. Residential property registrations in Hyderabad see a 14% decline in January. Total value of properties registered also sees a 16% dip. Experts say the dip is triggered by fewer takers for homes priced above 1 crore rupees. And ahead of Valentine's Day, Bengaluru-based dating app Aisle releases its latest dating report. Findings reveal that South Indians prefer action over words and don't believe in Bollywood-style romances. Well, our top story first. Love in India is changing quietly but fundamentally. Ahead of Valentine's Day this weekend, a new report by dating platform Aisle, based on insights from nearly 6,000 urban Indian singles, suggests that modern relationships are becoming less performative and far more intentional. Women, the data shows, are learning boundaries, men are learning patience, grand gestures are losing their appeal, and they're being replaced by consistency and effort. Now, while most Indians say they feel emotionally expressive only in their mother tongue, the vast majority still chooses English when it comes to matters of the heart. Perhaps the most interesting aspect of these findings, especially for some of us in the South, is that the report points to a clear cultural contrast, with South India approaching love as something to be practiced and built, while the North still draws more heavily from cinematic and verbal expressions of romance. So what does all this say about how Indians are dating in 2026, how they're committing and partnering today, and what does it mean for platforms like Aisle that sit at the center of this shift? I'm joined now by Chandni Ganglani, head of Aisle, to break it all down for us. Chandni, great speaking to you as always. Thanks so much for joining us in the broadcast. Now, your report shows a clear North-South difference in how love is expressed, with the North drawing more from Bollywood cues and verbal affirmation, and the South leaning towards logic, consistency, and acts of service. So how should we interpret this? Is this less about one region being better at love and more about different emotional training versus execution? And does this mismatch increasingly show up on dating platforms like Aisle?
Absolutely. I think when it comes to better, there is no better or worse when when we talk about expressions of love or romance, right? We think the key is in alignment. Every individual is, on a quest to find someone who aligns with their emotional rhythm. And, at places like Isle, we're constantly trying to understand the history, the culture, the conditioning that has led to something like this. As you rightly pointed out, on the report, North expresses love very differently. The love languages, which have shown up in the North have been more around the grand gestures, verbal assurances, gifts, so on and so forth. Versus South is more towards acts of service and quality time. But the question is, why is this happening and where is this coming from? And the answer largely lies in the first is the history, right? History is proof. North has always seen Taj Mahal as a symbol of love, and kings and kingdoms building palaces for their queens. So it has been historic in nature for North. Second is the pop culture reference, which you rightly pointed out to Bollywood. 26% of Indians, North Indians mentioned that their romantic dream has been shaped by Bollywood, right? And however, we also believe that art imitates life and life imitates art. And the third is the family dynamics. If you think about North, they have a lot of joint families, extended families that live around them. So in this context, if someone has to express their love, it is more in terms of verbal assurances, gifts, so on and so forth. Now, if we draw this parallel to the South, what's really happening here? South is also influenced by cinema, right? But in this cinema, they used to actually look at responsibility, sacrifice, honor. These are the things that shape South Indian minds when it comes to love. And largely in areas like Chennai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, a lot of first generation urban professionals came here for education or job, moving towards nuclear settlements. So what do they start looking for? They start looking for acts of services from their partners, and they look for more shared responsibility in this partnership. So the question is not what's better or what's worse, but what's more aligned. And homegrown apps, like I try to understand India better every day so that we can align this.
Right, right. No, Chandni, you couldn't have possibly said it better. The environment almost always determines the way one expresses love. But Chandni, the one finding in the report that stood out for me was that nearly 80% of your respondents feel most emotionally expressive in their mother tongue. And yet over 80% actually use English to express love. Now in South India, especially, many people here grew up and conversing, thinking in English, even at home for that matter. And as a South Indian myself, I can testify to this. So how do you think we should read this finding from a South Indian context? Is the emotional gap really about English versus mother tongue? Or is it more about formality versus vulnerability?
This is such a fantastic question, Jude. I'm so glad you've touched upon one of the most nuanced part of our reports, and I'm very excited to share this finding, right? When we dig deep into this, we realize fluency is not equal to emotional access, right? What do we mean by this? Let's unpack this here. First and foremost, there are 121 languages in India and almost 270 mother tongues within India. When you talk about South India, there's 6 classical languages in India, out of which 4 are South Indian, right? And they feature amongst the top 10 Indian spoken languages. With so much diversity in India, what does mother tongue really mean when it comes to relationships, right? Every individual, mother tongue is basically when you were born, what was the language that you first learned, what was very dominant in your environment. And hence, this becomes the vessel which carries the your emotional identity. And when it comes to relationships and vulnerability, etc., mother tongue sort of features up very strongly. Now, if you apply a psychological lens to this, you mentioned we have one individual carries multiple personalities. At a workplace, I might be very fluent in English. I may think English. I may act in English. But in family setups and friend setups, maybe not, right? At work, it's more of a left-brained activity versus when it comes to the matters of the heart, it's a more of a right-brained activity. So language almost becomes the mode to accessing different parts of your personalities within you. Having said this, right, within IEL itself, we have around 2.5 million love stories.
No doubt, Chandni.
Yeah,
right.
I think,
no,
having
absolutely.
said
And those
this,
are very interesting findings. I know for a fact that, even at IEL, there's a whole lot of reflection to this, these multiple languages, given the fact that you have services in multiple languages itself. So, but, I very quickly also want to pivot aside from the language itself. Your survey shows that 54% of women actually go about rejecting grand gestures and gifts. And the report links this to a shift away from seeing men purely as providers. So if grand gestures are losing currency now, what do you think replaces them? Which love languages or behaviors you feel are now gaining ground, and what very practically are men getting wrong today in terms of these languages themselves?
Absolutely. I think, Jude, fantastic point again. This specific point shows a very significant cultural shift within our gender dynamics, right? Is there a clear winner for amongst men and women when it comes to love language? Yes, they all have voted maximum for acts of services. This is the way they the love language that is appreciated the most. But if you dig further, what does this really mean? Love languages has always been a reflection of the evolving needs in the landscape, the changing gender roles, the changing expectations, right? So the question then becomes, what are the factors that has led to acts of services becoming the topmost love language today? And the answer is actually very interesting. There are multiple factors that we have seen. Firstly, women, were always observed as sacrificers in the past. We used to have hum saath saath hai, you cook food, you serve. That's been the way of love language. For men, it's always been you need to be a provider. That's what society has always shaped them. Now the dynamics are changing. Women have become independent. There are more nuclear settlements. So now individuals are questioning what is the new love language that is going to help our partnership. It is more to do with shared responsibilities, and hence acts of services tops the charts. I think this is relationships catching up to modern reality.
Modern realities it is, and acts of service no doubt is a clear winner. But one of the most striking learnings that I personally took from that report itself, Chandni, is that women today are saying that relationships are teaching them more about boundaries and deal breakers. What has changed in dating that's accelerating this learning? Is it the sheer volume of choice, repeated exposure to emotionally inconsistent behavior, or women simply exiting relationships earlier instead of enduring them?
What a fantastic way to look at this, Jude. So the first thing, when you talk about boundaries, right, what we've seen is in 2026, one of the trends which is at its highest is women participation in the dating landscape is at an all-time high. Which means that for over a decade, when dating, was a majorly male-focused game, women are stepping into this game and saying, let me demystify the unsaid rules of dating. Where is my boundary when it comes to physical intimacy? Where is my boundary when it comes to family dynamics, when it comes to communication styles, so on, so forth. And why is it women more than men? Right? When we dig deeper on this, we also realize there are multiple factors. Women have constraints like biological clock. There's a real time constraint. I don't want to waste my time. I want to know where this is headed. Second, it comes in the way of my career. If this is not going anywhere, I need to know right away. Third is, I also don't want to like my social media, like there's a lot of exposure in social media now. There's asymmetry of information that has gone down, right? So women are no longer ready to take the emotional load of the relationship. And
well, I think it's fair to say that women have entered a new realm of being in relationships, one that is making them realize what their boundaries are and putting themselves first. But on that note, Chandni Gaglani, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and breaking down some of the findings of IELTS' latest dating report. Great having you here with us as always.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Well, on that note, we're also being told that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is speaking in the Lok Sabha. Let's listen into what the Finance Minister is saying on the floor of the House.
The MSME category, even though they have the capacity, even though they have every strength, but even in the last budget, we expanded the definition of MSME so that even if they go beyond a certain level in their turnover, they'll still be defined as MSME. They don't lose out on their benefits. But this budget, we've taken that a bit further and very clearly announced ways in which such medium-sized industries which have potential to grow and export and also become champions in their sectors can be given further help, and I've announced several steps towards equity help, professional help, and also making sure that they will have liquidity access. And in the process of 3 ways in which we want to reach them, we are giving them the support which, even if they grow out of the turnover limit, which defines them as an MSME, they will be leaders in their sectors so that they can participate in India's growth. Is this only for industries? And is it not going to concentrate, is this budget not going to concentrate on building manpower so that our youth can aspire in a particular sphere of activity to go with skills in his hand or her hand and achieve jobs or become entrepreneurs themselves? In this, I would like to highlight 2 major announcements that we've made, in which I have not named any states. In fact, I have openly said, for creating this big facility, states can aspire, any state can aspire, going through the PM Gati Shakti filters. If you think you have a proposition in your hand, any state can ask for one of the 5 that I've announced in terms of the allied and health service, where we want to set up medical hubs states can aspire to be a part of it, wherein all the aspects of medical education and hospitals for treatment of patients can all be focused in one area, where nurses or any other 10 different allied health services will have their institutions through which people can learn, get themselves skilled, find jobs there itself, and that will become a medical tourism hub. So any state can qualify, and I'm sure states which have traditional strength can also be coming in for it. And this includes Ayush as well. So this is a major forward-looking proposition wherein immediately, because of the medical tourism advantage that India has, this will become a center of multi-purpose, multi-speciality allied health service center through which we can promote medical health, medical tourism. So that was one of the major announcements. Similarly, we have said, instead of waiting to qualify and finishing your education and coming out and seeking where should they go for acquiring skills, the skilling element can be brought into education itself, and at the end of the day, when they come out, students can say, I can become entrepreneur, and this kind of a mega center can be kept next to any industrial cluster that any state has. So these mega entrepreneurship building centers as education hubs can also be coming up from any state. We are willing to work with the states so that this mammoth higher education center can be propped up, and therefore students can go there, come out as entrepreneurs, get to doing businesses. So if we've done these two in the major education-related activity, health-related activity, we've also openly said that mega textile parks, we are willing to work with states, particularly looking at industrial textiles, looking at textiles which are going to be new age, which are now becoming a part of manufacturing in industries, whether they manufacture a car, where the safety cushion which comes in is all completely made out of industrial textiles. So these kind of new age textile requirements can also be produced. So these are major announcements, and I welcome any state which wants to come into this area. The center is willing to work with them and promote it. If this is all being done at the level of youth and students and larger centers where jobs and education can go together, health and education can go together, health and providing services to patients who come from different parts of the world come together. We are also placing emphasis in animal husbandry, fisheries, to make sure that in every district you get the facilities for a veterinary surgeon, veterinary hospital, testing labs, so that animal husbandry can be given that priority immediately in the rural areas. So farmers or those who are not farmers who want to get into animal husbandry can also benefit. That is why these announcements for fishing sector, it goes along with money being put in for restoring 500 Amrit Sarovars, the waterways, and the particular waterway which has been, national waterway which has been announced, also has institutions of excellence along its course, along the course of the river, so that shipbuilding, boat building, particularly I mentioned this, the route in which the national waterway is being announced, which will end up covering all the mineral-rich parts of the country and linking up with Paradip or with Dhamra port, is passing through states where the Nishad log can become boat makers, and they're already experts in it. They can also teach people. They can become part of the Institute of Excellence, so that inland shipbuilding for the transporting of huge logistical facilities will all have the support of the local experts who for generations have done this work. They can also benefit in this growth. Equally, ma'am, as I said, not just helping the MSMEs which are new, but also the old and legacy industries, 200 legacy clusters which have been known for decades as those places which supported MSME, and from there they produce and export. It can be any of them. It can be Ludhiana, it can be Jalandhar, or it can be Kanpur, or it can be centers near Bihar, it can be anywhere in Bengal. So any legacy cluster, 200, we have volunteered that it can be funded, upgraded, given the modern instruments, hardware, software that is required, we will be undertaking that. Other than also providing for girls' hostel in every district, so that girls do not hesitate to take up to science education, which requires long-term, long hours to be spent in the colleges and universities.